I never meant it to sound serious. That's the lie I tell myself now, because it's easier than admitting the truth, that some part of me wanted her to believe it. We were sitting on the hood of my car, the metal still warm from the day, the city breathing quietly around us. Yellow streetlights spilled down like soft halos, turning the pavement into something almost golden. The air smelled faintly of rain and petrol and unfinished conversations. She was laughing. God, she always laughed like that, head tilted back slightly, eyes half closed, as if the world had finally said something kind to her. I remember thinking, in that moment, that if happiness had a sound, it would be her voice echoing into the night. That's when I said it. Maybe one day I'll marry you. The words left my mouth light and careless, dressed as a joke, wrapped in a smile. I even laughed after, nudging her shoulder like it was nothing. Like I hadn't just dropped a match near dry grass. For a second, the night held its breath. She didn't laugh. Her body went still beside me, the warmth between us shifting into something fragile. She turned her face toward mine slowly, like she was afraid that sudden movement might break whatever was happening. Her eyes searched my face, not playfully, not teasingly, but deeply, as if she were trying to read something written beneath my skin. In that silence, there were two versions of me reflected in her gaze. The man who joked to hide his fear. And the man she secretly believed in. I didn't see it then. I swear I didn't. I was too busy being comfortable, too busy enjoying the safety of not meaning my words. I missed how her smile changed, not brighter, but softer. Hopeful in a quiet, dangerous way. The kind of smile you only give to a future you're scared to trust. She said nothing. Instead, she looked away, back toward the street, where a bus passed slowly, its windows glowing like small, moving rooms filled with other people's lives. I thought the moment had passed. I thought the joke had landed and disappeared into the night like smoke. For me, it ended there. For her, something began. The days that followed didn't announce themselves as different. There was no dramatic shift, no confrontation, no sudden confession. Just small things. Subtle things. The kind you don't notice unless you're paying attention, and I wasn't. She started mentioning places. Have you ever thought about living somewhere quieter? She asked once, stirring sugar into her coffee, watching it dissolve. Maybe a small town. Somewhere with mornings that don't rush you. Another day, while we walked past a row of houses, she slowed down in front of one with a narrow garden and white curtains. I love homes like this, she said softly. They feel steady. Steady. The word stayed with her. Not with me. She talked about mornings, how she liked sunlight through thin curtains, how she believed breakfast tasted better when shared. She spoke about names she liked, about plants she'd grow if she ever had a place of her own. She even asked, once, almost casually, do you think people grow into marriage, or decide it suddenly? I laughed that time too. I always laughed. I told myself she knew I was joking. That she understood my tone that night under the streetlights. That she wasn't taking it seriously. I told myself a lot of things, because correcting her would have required honesty, and honesty would have required courage. Instead, I let silence do the work for me. Silence became my answer. Silence became my cowardice. At night, I sometimes replayed that moment on the car hood, but only the parts that didn't scare me. The laughter. The warmth. I edited out the look in her eyes when she turned toward me. I didn't ask what she thought. I didn't ask how she felt. I didn't ask because I didn't want to know. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that while I was staying still, she was moving forward. Quietly. She began preparing. Not in ways the world would notice. Not in ways I would see. She wrote things down. I found out later that she kept a small notebook tucked into her bag, its pages filled with thoughts she never said out loud. Lists of colors she liked. Songs that made her think of promises. Sketches of dresses she pretended were just for fun. She reread messages. Replayed moments. Treated my words like something sacred, something that only needed time to become real. That night under the streetlights, while I had already moved on, she went home and stood in front of her mirror for a long time. She tried to imagine what kind of woman marries a man who jokes about forever. She asked herself if she was already becoming her. Sometimes, when we sat together in silence, I noticed her fingers tracing invisible shapes on her knee, like she was writing something only she could see. I thought it was a habit. It was a future. There was a painting in her apartment, a simple one, hung near the window. Soft colors. A woman standing at the edge of something unseen, light spilling in from the side. I'd asked her once why she liked it so much. Because she looks like she's waiting, she said. Waiting. I didn't understand then how dangerous that word can be. Weeks passed. The weather shifted from warm to uncertain, clouds rolling in without warning. Rain came and went, tapping gently against windows like it wanted to be let in. Every time it rained, she seemed calmer, as if the sky understood her better than I did. She trusted my words more than my actions. And that trust, God, it was a weight I didn't feel until it was already crushing her. The truth is, I liked being believed in. I liked the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her voice softened when she spoke about someday. I let her hope live because it made me feel bigger than I was. I didn't realize hope needs care. I didn't realize it bleeds when ignored. The last time we sat on the hood of my car again, months later, the streetlights looked the same, but everything else felt different. She leaned closer than before, her shoulder resting lightly against my arm. She didn't joke that night. She didn't test the future with words. She had already accepted it. I remember the wind lifting her hair, the way she looked up at the light, as if measuring time. I remember thinking she seemed peaceful. That should have scared me. Because peace doesn't come from uncertainty. It comes from belief. And she believed in something I hadn't yet earned. I didn't know she was preparing for a promise. I didn't know she was choosing a day. I didn't know she was trusting me with something irreversible. All I knew was that I had made a joke. And somewhere along the way, it had stopped being funny. And when the night finally came, the one I didn't understand until it was too late, I would realize that words don't disappear just because you laugh after them. They wait. Just like she did. I didn't know it then, but while I was choosing comfort over courage, the rain had already started to fall. It came softly at first, the kind of rain that doesn't announce itself, just a quiet tapping against the world, as if asking permission to stay. By the time night settled in, the old hall at the edge of town stood washed in silver, its windows glowing faintly like tired eyes that refused to close. Inside, she was alone. I imagine her standing near the entrance, hands folded together, shoulders straight as if posture alone could keep hope from trembling. The hall smelled of polished wood and something older, dust and memories and promises made by people braver than me. The ceiling lights hummed gently, too loud in the absence of voices. Every sound echoed longer than it should have, like time itself was stretching just to watch her wait. She wore a white dress. Not the kind meant to steal breath or turn heads. Not dramatic. Not loud. It was simple in the way truth is simple, clean lines, soft fabric, confidence stitched into every seam. It didn't cling to her, it stood with her. Elegant without asking for permission. Bold without shouting. It was the kind of dress you wear when you believe in something. When you believe in someone. She had chosen it carefully. I know that now. She didn't pick the first one that fit. She stood in front of mirrors, turning slowly, searching her reflection like it might answer her questions. She asked herself whether white suited her honesty, whether simplicity could hold the weight of expectation. In the end, she chose the one that felt the most like herself. If he comes, she whispered to the empty room while fastening the last button, I want him to see I took him seriously. That sentence hurts more than any accusation ever could. The hall was ready in its own quiet way. Chairs aligned in patient rows. A small table near the front waited with nothing on it. No flowers, no papers, no proof that this night was meant to matter. Someone had once hung a painting there, a faded landscape of a road disappearing into fog. It still hung crooked on the wall, its frame chipped, its message unmistakable. A road that leads somewhere, or nowhere at all. She stood beneath it, unaware of the symbolism pressing down on her shoulders. The rain grew steadier outside, streaking the windows, blurring the world beyond the glass. Each drop slid downward slowly, racing others and losing, just like minutes slipping past her fingers. She checked the time. Then her phone. Then the door. Again. No footsteps. No familiar silhouette cutting through the rain. No message lighting up her screen. Still, she waited. I imagine her telling herself stories to stay calm. Maybe she thought I was late. Maybe traffic had stalled me. Maybe my phone had died. Hope is creative like that, it builds excuses faster than doubt can tear them down. She paced once, then stopped, afraid movement might make the emptiness louder. She smoothed the front of her dress, a nervous habit, and stared at her reflection in the glass door. The woman looking back at her seemed older somehow. Not tired, resolved. Like someone who had already decided to believe, regardless of outcome. Minutes became something heavier. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly, each second landing like a question. She sat down in the front row, then stood again, unable to rest. She held her phone with both hands now, thumbs hovering, unwilling to be the first to break the silence. She had promised herself she wouldn't beg for something that was already promised. Outside, thunder rolled far away, not threatening, just distant enough to remind her the sky was paying attention. I wasn't. At some point, she walked to the small table and found an envelope tucked beneath it, left there by mistake from some other event. Blank. Unwritten. She picked it up and turned it over, tracing its edges with careful fingers. For a moment, she imagined my handwriting on it. Imagined words like I'm here or I'm sorry or I choose you. She slipped the envelope into her bag anyway. Hope like souvenirs. She checked her phone again. Nothing. Her reflection in the darkened window wavered as lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the room in stark honesty. The dress glowed white against the shadows, too pure for the doubt creeping into her chest. She swallowed, lifting her chin, refusing to let tears rewrite the night before it was finished. Because when a woman believes in a man's words, she doesn't hear the joke. She hears the future. She hears mornings promised without being spoken. She hears a life unfolding quietly, steadily. She hears footsteps approaching even when the hall remains silent. She waited because waiting felt more faithful than leaving. The rain soaked the steps outside, puddles forming where my car should have been. Each passing vehicle sent light skimming across the walls, igniting brief flares of hope that died just as quickly. Her heart learned the rhythm of disappointment in real time. Lift, pause, fall. Still, she waited. I imagine her sitting down again, hands resting in her lap now, fingers curled inward. The dress rustled softly when she moved, the only sound that belonged to her. She stared at the painting on the wall, the road disappearing into fog, and wondered whether she was brave or foolish to stand at its edge. Maybe both. Time did something cruel then. It slowed without mercy. It made her aware of every breath, every blink, every unanswered thought. The hall felt bigger, emptier, like it was expanding around her absence of certainty. She thought of the night under the streetlights. Of my laugh. Of the way I had said the words like they weighed nothing. She replayed them now, stripping away the tone, holding on to the meaning instead. Maybe one day I'll marry you. She had heard a promise. I had meant an escape. The rain began to ease, leaving behind a fragile quiet. The storm didn't end dramatically, it simply drifted away, as if even the sky grew tired of waiting. She stood once more, smoothing her dress one final time, and walked toward the door. She paused there. Hope doesn't die loudly. It hesitates. She looked back at the hall, the empty chairs, the crooked painting, the clock still ticking like it had nothing to lose. She wondered how long waiting was supposed to last before it turned into something else. Outside, the air smelled clean, washed of expectation. She stepped onto the wet stone, the hem of her dress brushing against rain-darkened ground. The world felt too normal for what had just happened. Cars passed. Lights changed. Somewhere, life continued uninterrupted. She checked her phone one last time. Still nothing. That was the moment something inside her shifted, not shattered, not broken, but quietly rearranged. Like furniture moved in a dark room. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply exhaled, long and slow, as if releasing a version of herself she had carried too far. She folded the weighting into her chest and walked away from the hall. I didn't see her that night. I didn't know the rain had stopped waiting for me before she did. But somewhere, beneath the soft echo of an empty room and a dress that deserved witnesses, a promise I never meant to keep was still hanging in the air, unfinished, unresolved, and heavier than I could imagine. And when I would finally learn where she had been standing while I was absent, I would understand something too late. Some waits end quietly. But their echoes last forever. I found out by accident. It wasn't a dramatic revelation. No thunder. No confrontation. Just a question asked too casually, in the middle of a day that thought it would remain ordinary. A mutual friend stood across from me, coffee cooling between her hands, confusion creasing her forehead. She studied my face like she was searching for a punchline that never came. "Why didn't you go?" she asked. The question slipped past me at first. I smiled faintly, distracted, already thinking about something else. Go where? The silence that followed was sharp. Her eyes widened, not with anger, but with disbelief. The kind that comes when you realize two people have been living in completely different versions of the same story. My chest tightened before she even spoke again. "The hall," she said slowly. "Last night." Something inside me shifted, like a chair scraping back too fast in a quiet room. Blood rushed to my ears. The air felt suddenly thin, as if the world had decided to test whether I deserved to breathe. "What hall?" I asked, though part of me already knew. She stared at me then, really stared. She was waiting for you. The words landed without sound, but they broke something all the same. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't ask questions. My body moved before my mind could catch up, keys in hand, door closing behind me with a finality I didn't understand yet. Outside, the sky hung low and pale, the kind of overcast that makes everything look unfinished. I drove without thinking. The road blurred past me, each streetlight flashing like a memory I had ignored. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, knuckles pale, as if pressure alone could rewind time. Every red light felt like an accusation. Every green one felt undeserved. I replayed that night under the streetlights, the laugh, the joke, the way I hadn't noticed her silence. My heart began to pound harder with every mile, dread settling into something heavier than fear. The hole appeared suddenly, rising at the edge of town like a witness that had waited all night to speak. I parked crookedly and got out before the engine fully died. The doors were unlocked, hanging slightly ajar, as if the building itself hadn't expected to be abandoned so soon. Inside, the air was cool and still. The lights were dim now, not off, just tired, casting long shadows across rows of empty chairs. My footsteps echoed too loudly. Each step felt like trespassing. I stopped at the entrance, afraid of what I might see, afraid of what I might already be too late to change. The hall smelled faintly of rain and dust and something softer, like fabric that had been worn with hope. And then I saw her. She sat alone in the front row, hands folded neatly in her lap. The white dress she wore was still beautiful, but no longer untouched. Slightly creased at the waist. The hem darkened where it had brushed damp stone. Her makeup was intact, careful and restrained, as if she had refused to let the night take even that from her. Her posture was straight. Her dignity untouched. But her eyes. God. Her eyes looked like they had been holding something fragile for too long and were just beginning to realize it wouldn't be held back forever. The painting on the wall behind her, the road disappearing into fog, tilted just slightly, its frame catching the low light. I wondered how long it had been watching her wait. I took a step forward. Then another. The sound of my shoes against the floor finally reached her. She lifted her head slowly, as if she had rehearsed this moment in her mind so many times that reality now moved in slow motion. Our eyes met. She stood immediately. Not in relief. Not in excitement. But with a quiet certainty, like someone who had already decided what this moment meant before it arrived. I knew you'd come, she said softly. That sentence shattered me. It wasn't accusation. It wasn't anger. It was faith, undamaged, undeserved faith, that I had not earned and did not deserve. My throat closed. The hole seemed to tilt, the air thickening around us. I wanted to speak, to explain, to apologize, to undo everything at once, but words scattered before they could form. She took a step closer, then stopped. Distance held between us like a line neither of us knew how to cross. I waited, she continued, her voice steady despite the fracture beneath it. I thought maybe you were late. Then I thought maybe something happened. And then, she paused, her gaze dropping briefly to the floor before lifting again. Then I just waited. Each sentence felt like another weight added to my chest. I didn't know, I finally said, the words small and useless the moment they left my mouth. I swear, I didn't know. She nodded slowly, as if she had already expected that answer. I know. That hurt more than if she had shouted. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, plain, unmarked. She didn't hand it to me. She just held it between her fingers, turning it once, twice. I thought you might write, she said quietly. Or call. Or send something. Anything. The envelope remained empty. The clock on the wall ticked loudly now, reclaiming the room. Outside, a car passed, sunlight briefly flashing across the windows, illuminating the dust in the air like suspended memories. I took you seriously, she said. Not as an accusation. As a fact. I didn't think you were joking. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't sound like a defense. And defense was the last thing I deserved. I should have said something, I whispered. I should have stopped you. I should have. She raised her hand gently, stopping me. The gesture was calm, controlled. It scared me more than anger ever could. Don't rewrite it now, she said. Just tell me the truth. The truth burned. I was afraid, I admitted. And instead of being honest, I let you believe in something I wasn't ready to carry. She studied my face, searching again, not for promises this time, but for damage. For cracks. For sincerity that arrived too late. The dress caught the light as she moved, still white, still beautiful, but now heavy with meaning. I realized then that this wasn't just a dress. It was a declaration. A step she had taken alone. The rain began again outside, light at first, tapping against the windows like a question being asked one final time. She inhaled slowly. "I don't regret waiting," she said. "But I won't do it again." Those words settled between us, final and immovable. She turned away, walking toward the door with quiet composure, the envelope slipping back into her bag, still empty. I stood frozen, watching her leave the hall that had been ready for a future that never arrived. At the doorway, she paused. Not to look back. Just long enough for the rain to touch her dress. Then she stepped outside. I was left alone, with the chairs, the painting, the echo of faith I had broken, and a realization that came too late to save anything except the truth. Some moments don't wait for understanding. They arrive, ask everything of you. And if you're not ready, they leave you standing in the wreckage, holding nothing but regret. I didn't defend myself. The instinct was there, sharp and familiar, rising like a reflex to soften what I'd done, to explain it into something smaller. But I swallowed it. I let the silence stand between us the way it deserved to, tall and unignored. For the first time since I'd known her, I chose not to hide behind tone or timing or charm. I chose truth. "I was wrong," I said. My voice sounded different in the hall, lower, steadier, stripped of its usual ease. The words didn't rush out. They landed one by one, heavy enough to leave marks. I joked because I was afraid. I was afraid of meaning it. Afraid of becoming someone who had to live up to it. I paused, forcing myself to keep my eyes on hers. "But you believed in me." The rain tapped softly against the windows, a patient percussion that filled the spaces I didn't. The crooked painting behind her, the road dissolving into fog, seemed to tilt a little more, as if even it were listening. She didn't cry. That surprised me, even though it shouldn't have. Her strength had never been loud. It lived in stillness, in restraint, in the way she held herself when everything inside her wanted to break. Her hands rested calmly at her sides, fingers relaxed, shoulders set, not in defense, but in resolve. "Marriage isn't a joke," she said. Her voice was even, but there was an edge to it now, not sharp, not cruel, just clear. "It's not something you say because the night is kind or the laughter is easy." She took a step closer, then stopped, leaving a careful distance between us. "But love shouldn't be a gamble either." The words hit harder than anger ever could. A gamble. Something you place a bet on, knowing you might lose. I had let her stake her heart on odds she didn't know were rigged. "I know," I said quietly. "And I won't ask you to forget that. I won't ask you to erase the waiting or the silence or the night I didn't show up." I exhaled, feeling the weight of the admission settle into my bones. "I only want to tell you who I am now." She studied me the way she always had, carefully, completely, like she was reading the margins, not just the lines. The whole felt smaller, more intimate, as if the chairs had leaned in, as if the air itself had tightened to make room for honesty. "I don't want your promises," she said. "I wanted your presence." "I'm here," I said. The simplicity of it surprised me. No flourish. No bargaining. Just a fact I was finally willing to carry. Her gaze flicked to the envelope peeking from her bag. She drew it out slowly and held it between us, the blank surface catching the light. "This stayed empty," she said. "I kept thinking maybe it wouldn't." "I should have filled it," I replied. With an apology. With the truth. With the fear I was too proud to admit. I reached out, then stopped myself, letting my hand fall back to my side. "I'm not asking you to trust me yet." She nodded once, approving the restraint. "Good." Outside, the rain eased, thinning into a mist that softened the edges of the world. The hall breathed with us, old wood creaking as if settling into a new posture. I noticed details I hadn't before, the scuff marks on the floor, the faint watermark near the door, the way the painting's frame had been repaired with care instead of replaced. "I learned something while I was waiting," she said. "Not about you. About me." She held the envelope closer to her chest now, not protective, decisive. "I learned that I can stand alone without becoming bitter. That I can hope without disappearing into it." The distance between us felt deliberate, measured. Not rejection. Boundaries. The kind you build to keep something alive instead of letting it bleed out. "I don't want to be chased," she continued. "I don't want to be convinced. And I don't want to be loved only when it's convenient." "I know," I said. "And if I ever forget, I'll deserve to lose you. Her eyes softened, not in forgiveness, but in recognition. She had always known when someone was finally speaking from the place that mattered. The clock ticked, steady and unbothered. Time, it seemed, was willing to keep going, whether we were ready or not. I took a breath that felt like stepping off a ledge. Will you still wait, I asked, if I mean it this time? The question wasn't dramatic. It didn't echo. It didn't beg. It sat between us like a stone placed carefully on the ground, honest, weighty, and entirely possible to walk around. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she crossed the remaining distance and set the envelope on the small table beneath the painting. The road into fog hovered above it, a reminder of how easily futures blur when you don't choose them. She smoothed the envelope flat with her palm, then looked at me again. Waiting isn't the same as stopping, she said. I won't pause my life for you. I won't measure my days by your readiness. I wouldn't ask you to, I replied. Good, she said again. The words sounded like a hinge clicking into place. Then listen carefully. She reached into her bag and removed the dress, folded now, careful, respectful. The white fabric caught the light, still beautiful, still dignified, but no longer a declaration. She placed it beside the envelope. This isn't a symbol anymore, she said. It's a chapter. The rain stopped completely, leaving behind a clean quiet. Somewhere outside, a bird tested the air with a tentative call. I won't wait the way I did before, she said. But I will walk forward. If you walk with me, not ahead, not behind, then we'll see what grows. The words weren't a yes. They weren't a no. They were a door left unlocked. I'll walk, I said. And when I stumble, I'll tell you. When I'm afraid, I won't joke it away. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. A small movement. A significant one. Then start by doing something simple, she said. What? I asked. Stay, she replied. Not to talk. Not to promise. Just to stay. So I did. We stood there together beneath the crooked painting, the envelope and the dress resting quietly between us, evidence of a night that had almost ended us, and a morning that might still arrive. The whole felt different now, less like a witness and more like a beginning that hadn't been named yet. When she finally turned toward the door, she paused and looked back, not with expectation, but with clarity. I won't be waiting, she said softly. And in that moment, I understood the truth beneath the fear, that love isn't proven by how long someone stands still for you, but by whether you learn to move, together, when it matters. The door opened. Light spilled in. I followed, not knowing what came next, only knowing that for the first time, my words were ready to be lived in. She didn't answer immediately. That pause, small, measured, deliberate, carried more weight than any speech. The hall had emptied into morning light, the kind that doesn't rush in but arrives carefully, as if it knows it's stepping into something fragile. Dust floated in slow constellations. The crooked painting still hung on the wall, the road dissolving into fog, but now the fog felt thinner. Temporary. She stepped closer. The distance we'd been guarding closed with a quiet inevitability, like two lines finally meeting after running parallel for too long. I felt her presence before I felt her touch, the warmth, the steadiness, the unmistakable choice in her movement. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She reached for my hand the way you reach for something you've already decided to hold. Her fingers curled into mine. Not tight. Not tentative. Certain. The contact sent a shock through me, not electricity, but gravity. It anchored me to the floor, to the moment, to the truth I had been circling for chapters of my life without ever entering. Her palm was warm, her grip calm, and in that simple connection, I felt the cost of every word I'd ever treated lightly. She looked up at me. Her eyes weren't shining with tears. They weren't pleading. They were clear. Honest. Awake. The kind of eyes that don't ask to be convinced because they've already done the work of believing, and now require proof. Only if you understand, she said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't soften to make it easier for me to accept. It stood exactly where it was meant to stand, firm as ground you test with your foot before trusting your weight to it. I don't want promises spoken lightly, she continued. I want a husband who knows what his words cost. The word husband didn't echo. It didn't ring like a bell or explode like a confession. It landed gently, intentionally, like a stone placed in water to see how deep it goes. I nodded. Not because it was expected. Not because it was safe. But because the nod came from somewhere deeper than fear. From a place that understood consequence and still chose forward. There was no laughter this time. No nervous smile. No attempt to soften the moment into something easier to swallow. The silence that followed was clean. And it held us without pressing, like hands at your back when you're standing at the edge of something vast. Only truth. I tightened my grip just enough for her to feel it, not possession, not urgency, commitment. The kind that says I'm here, and I intend to stay even when it costs me comfort. I understand, I said. The words felt heavier than any I'd spoken before, but they didn't bend me. They straightened my spine. I know what my words did to you. I know how far they reached without my permission, and how much damage they did when I didn't follow them. She listened without interrupting, her thumb brushing once across my knuckle. A small, grounding gesture. An intimacy earned, not assumed. I won't promise you ease, I went on. Or perfection. Or certainty every day. I paused, choosing the truth that mattered. But I will promise you attention. I will promise you honesty before comfort. And I will promise you that when I speak, I'll already be prepared to live inside the words. Her breath caught, not sharply, not dramatically, but enough for me to notice. Enough for me to know the words were reaching where they needed to go. She glanced past me then, toward the table beneath the painting. The envelope lay there still, blank but no longer empty. The dress, folded carefully beside it, looked less like an ending now and more like an artifact, proof of a threshold crossed. I used to think waiting was love, she said softly. That if I stood still long enough, it would turn into something real. I swallowed. Waiting taught me something else, she continued. That love is movement. Choice. Risk taken with open eyes. She turned back to me, her hand never leaving mine. I don't want to be carried into a future by words. I want to walk into it with someone who knows how heavy footsteps can be. I'll walk, I said. Even when it's uphill. Especially then. Outside, the day continued to gather itself. Sunlight warmed the wet stone steps where rain had lingered. Somewhere nearby, a door closed. Somewhere else, laughter rose and fell, unrelated to us, and somehow that felt right. The world didn't need to pause for this to matter. She stepped closer again, close enough that the space between us disappeared without ceremony. Her other hand came up, resting briefly against my chest, right over the place where my heart had learned how to regret. I won't test you, she said. I won't wait for you to fail. I won't ask you to, I replied. But I will watch, she finished. Not a threat. A truth. I nodded again. We stood like that for a long moment, hands joined, breaths aligned, the past hovering nearby without demanding to be relived. I thought of the night under the streetlights, the joke that had started everything, the careless laugh. I felt how far away that version of me was now, not erased but transformed, burned down into something sturdier. She released my hand gently and reached for the envelope. This doesn't need words today, she said. It needs time. She slipped it back into her bag, not as a keepsake, but as a placeholder. Something to be filled when the living had been done. At the door, she paused. I felt the old fear stir, the instinct to rush, to secure, to lock the moment down before it could slip. But I didn't move. I let the space exist. Let her choose without pressure. She turned back to me with a small smile, not hopeful, not guarded, real. This is a serious yes, she said. Not to marriage tomorrow. Not to certainty. She tilted her head slightly. But to beginning. The word settled into me like a vow that didn't need witnesses. I followed her outside. The air was fresh, rinsed clean of last night's doubt. The sky stretched open, blue and unafraid. She took a step forward, then another, not looking back to see if I was coming. I was. We walked side by side, not touching now, not distant either, finding the rhythm of a future that would demand more than words and offer more than safety. Behind us, the hall stood quiet, the painting still watching the road into fog. Ahead of us, the road opened. And this time, I didn't joke about where it might lead. I walked, knowing exactly what my words would cost, and willing, at last, to pay them.